Hello everyone. So in the last one we set up spawning our weapon. Now we can actually focus on getting it into his hand. So you see I got that. I can change it to a pistol. Well, you saw it in the last one. So the way we do that is we'll go into the player blueprint, and here where we are spawning the weapon, the way we're going to tell our character which one they're using is we'll just promote this to a variable where it's coming in. So we're spawning the weapon, we're getting the weapon info, and then getting the weapon ID, which is essentially it's the type of weapon that it is. So we'll right click that and promote that to a variable, call it weapon type, and we'll throw that in there. And then over in the player blueprint, where we'll handle all our animation settings, in the event graph, we can grab right here, get that weapon type, promote that to a variable inside our animation blueprint, and then we'll use this to pick which animation we're in. So in order to do that, we will need to go into our anim pieces folder, and we're going to need to set up the blend space for it. So let's right click our first one and we can duplicate it. BS underscore, we'll call this the armed lower. The way we're going to do this is we're going to have their legs animated one way, because when they're in a kind of combative state they would kind of use the same strafing motions. And then we'll blend through the spine the upper based on which weapon type they're actually holding. So if it's a rifle, they use the rifle animation. If it's a pistol, etc., etc. So let's go into our blend space here. We'll delete everything that's in it now. Oh, and if you don't want to duplicate the one and you want to go through the muscle memory of building it up, just right click animation, blend space is what we're working in right now. I just duplicate because then all this is set up, but if you haven't, then you need to make sure that all these settings are the same. So we will take our idle, and it doesn't matter which one. It can be, I'm just going to go for the iron sights. We're going to have it set up to where you can either be hip fire or iron sights fire, but for animating it's just, I just started recording. Alright, and then we will have our jog. We'll have our jog forward, jog left, jog right, and jog back. And then you can see. So that's, we don't really need, is there a walk? Crouch walk, walk forward. Oh, okay, yeah, we want to do the walk first, so I'm going to put these up a little higher. And then we'll set walk forward, that way at first they're like that. And then walk left, walk right, and then walk back. Then we can copy that and paste it up where we want it. I'll say at the 225 mark. Go through Control C, Control V, just copy and paste it up so we get that walk window. And then, so it doesn't matter that he's going from aiming to not aiming, that doesn't apply. What we'll do is inside our animation blueprint, now that we have that, we can go into our base states and set up another state. This will be our aiming state. We'll go into that, and we are going to take that blue blend space that we just made, and then we're going to do a layered blend per bone. I think I remember what it's called, but we're going to click right here, then we can get the list. Probably spine 01 will work. Oop, there we go. Then with that selected, set up a layer branch. Oh, spine underscore 01, blend depth 3, just like we set up all the other ones. Now for the blend pose, we want to change that based on what weapon type we're holding. So if we right click and just type in weapon type, blend weapon, weapon list, that's what it was called. So you can type in blend and then get the name of your enumerator, and it'll actually pull in a node for blending from that specific enumerator. We can plug this into our blend pose, plug in our weapon type to the active enum, and then if you right click this, you can add pins for the elements. I don't know why you have to do that. You would think it would just populate it automatically, but once you get this, right click, we can add one for the pistol, rifle, shotgun, sniper, and grenade launcher, which we'll probably use the same one for a few. So let's see, this is the aiming state. We'll call this the armed state, not the aiming state, because we'll have two variations. So yeah, alright, so let's grab our hip. Let's see, idle rifle hip, and we'll probably use this one for a few of them, so I want to make sure it's looping. And then that is my default pose, my rifle pose. If you have a shotgun idle animation, you can put it here. I do not. I'm going to use this one for all of these except the pistol. Let's see. We got a shotgun fire, but we don't got that. We'll just take that idle pistol right there. We want to make sure that we loop that animation also. Then we will plug that into the output result and compile. We don't have a way of actually going into the aiming mode, which we're actually going to go. Let's rename that to armed, because aiming is going to be something different. But we can go into our event graph. No, wait. We can go to our player blueprint, and we'll set a value of B, a boolean of B armed. I like to, adding these little B's at the beginning, it doesn't show up in the actual variable, so it doesn't interfere with like function names or other things. That's why the B comes in handy. Now in here, if we get that armed variable, right click, promote to variable, be armed, because he be armed at the moment. Then even though we got this name the same thing, we can still use that same boolean name. So for our transition rule going from base to armed, we put our boolean. And on the way back, we will say transfer back if armed is not this not boolean. So now if we go in here, we'll be able to see, if we look at him and I will set armed to true, now he's doing his thing. And for the weapon type, I guess we started with pistol, but we'll change it to rifle and then the animation changes. Now the pistol idle, that's the only one we got, so it just, but we also got that one to work for that. So let's set our direction and our speed onto our blend space. Then we can compile. Well, let's change that armed back to off to begin with. And then when we go into our player blueprint, when we spawn the weapon, we will set armed to true. So now, when I jump in and I spawn it, and if I, let's see, change my weapon wheel to pistol, then he's using that animation instead. So you don't have to have a setup for each individual weapon state, you can just blend based on that. Need a way to also put it away while we're still in the testing phase. Let's do that. We'll set up that animation. So we'll save everything real quick, and then under the animations, let's find our equip animations. Doesn't matter which one we use particularly, I don't think. Let's take a look at it. This is the equip rifle, and still it's gonna have a blend. So we'll use right click, create an anim montage, empty underscore player draw weapon, and then we can duplicate it in an empty underscore player stow weapon. That way we can also put it away. So under the draw weapon, let's see, right about here, we'll add a notify, right clicking, montage notify, and call it draw. Then we'll go to the stow weapon. This one is going to be played in reverse. So the rate scale over on the left side in the details, asset details, change this to -1. And then right about, let's see, so he would go like this, and we'll say right about here, we'll add that notify and call it stow. So now in here we can play montage. The skeletal mesh will be our character's mesh. The montage to play, we're going to do a select node. That way we can tell it one if we're armed and another if we're not. So we plug in that boolean, and then if we are not armed, then we can play our draw weapon. If we are, then we can play our stow weapon. And then of course as soon as we start the montage, the very next thing we want to do is flip-flop between that. So I'm going to take my armed, I'm going to get a select off of it, and then I'm going to plug in the boolean again. So we'll change it based on its own value. So if we are not, and we're doing this, then we want to say we are now. And if we are, then we want to say we're not. Now on this notify name, we can do a switch on name, and then on notify begin, we'll add 2 pins, and then under this pin names over on the right, we can do one for draw and one for stow. And for draw, let's get rid of that default. For the draw, we're spawning the weapon, and for the stow, we'll create a new function over on the left. This will be destroy weapon, and we're going to take our weapon reference that we spawned in the other one, get it, right click, convert to validated get, just to make sure it actually exists before we try to destroy it. Otherwise it'll throw an error if it finds nothing. And then if it is valid, since we're trying to destroy it, we shall compile that, and then back out in the event graph we will plug that in right there, and then we'll just throw another armed boolean on at the end and leave it to false. We'll save everything real quick, and then we'll take a look at how that looks. Oh, right. Alright, so back in the player blueprint, we're playing one in reverse, but these start at the beginning, so we need to also tell it the starting position. We'll do a select on that also, based on whether or not they're armed. If they are not armed, then they're playing the draw animation, and we want it to start from the beginning. If they are armed, is this a percentage based? I think it's time based. I'm going to try one thing, and if that doesn't work, then we'll know. So I'm going to check the time of my animation, 1.73, and I'm going to say start at 1.73. Starting position you would think would be like a percentage based, but if I remember correctly, it's time based, so we want to start at the 1.73 mark, not 100%, not 1% basically. And now we'll give it a shot. Spawned. Stowed. And you can see that since we're doing it with the blend, it doesn't matter what my current animation is. He'll, oh, unless I'm falling. Okay, that's good to know. Let's go fix that real quick. So in our armed graph, the reason that's happening is because we're blending the lower with a run, not taking into account whether or not he might be falling. So all we're going to do is we're going to add a blend by bool. We'll hook the armed to the false because what we want to check is if he's jumping. If he is jumping, then we want to do our, what is it, our fall loop. Is it this one? Yeah. Whatever your jumping loop animation is, and you want to also make sure that it is looping. So now, jump back in. Okay. One more issue that we have is that if your character lands, then they aren't doing their thing. So what we want to do is if it's interrupted by that other animation playing, then we will do a branch. And if it's interrupted and we're armed, if not, we now are. If we are, then we are now not. No, that can't be right. Let's leave it at this for a second, and then in the next one we'll check this up. I don't want to set something wrong and then realize, you dunce, you know. So this will work for now, just to make sure. But that'll get him at least running around with a gun. Let's check the rifle, see how that looks real quick. Very nice, very nice. And then if I jump, it's a little wonky. Mainly that landing animation. We can speed that up though. So if we go to our landed animation, we can set the play rate to 1.25. Or you can set it to whatever makes sense for your landing animation. And it'll kind of pop him through it a little bit faster. So yeah, now he's at least animated with it. And the next one we'll fix some more of the animations, and then we'll set up how to swap between different weapons. So see y'all soon. Bye.